Three men walked into a room, and one of them doesn't want to be seen walking out with anything he has to explain.
That's the quiet architecture of this Beijing summit. Trump arrives carrying a war that was supposed to last 72 hours and is now in its 10th week. The Strait of Hormuz is closed. Gasoline prices are doing what closed straits do to gasoline prices. Xi sits across the table, having just hosted Iran's foreign minister, and notably issued no joint communique afterward. In diplomatic language, that means we haven't decided what we want yet. The administration's framing is that America holds the upper hand because China is more exposed to Hormuz disruption. That deserves a fair hearing. China does import a significant share of its oil through that strait, but U.S. intelligence assessments reported by France 24 indicate Iran's arsenal is not meaningfully degraded. That complicates the claim that Iran has been defeated militarily. A weak adversary and a closed strait don't coexist easily in the same argument. The realists counter that Trump needs a Chinese off-ramp badly enough that Beijing can extract real concessions on Taiwan or semiconductors is better supported by the evidence. Wartime presidents have traded strategic assets for exits before. That's not a criticism. Sometimes it's the right call. The question is whether anyone in this negotiation is willing to say out loud what they're trading for what.
Here's what's verified across 22 outlets and 67 source articles. President Trump landed at Beijing Capital International Airport on Wednesday for his first state visit to China since 2017. The Strait of Hormuz remains closed to commercial shipping. Brent crude is trading at a 12-month high. Iran's foreign minister was hosted at the Great Hall of the People 3 days earlier. No joint communique was issued, confirmed by Reuters, Le Monde, and the Associated Press. U.S. intelligence assessments leaked through 3 Western outlets indicate Iran's missile and drone arsenal is largely intact, contradicting the administration's defeated framing. Taiwan Strait military activity has spiked. 3 Western navies have moved ships into the South China Sea this week. These are not contested facts. The interpretation is. The structural analogy framing this summit is one Beijing is happy to encourage and Washington is straining to avoid. Nixon in Moscow, 1972. Nixon arrived needing to extract from a war that was hemorrhaging political capital. He came to Moscow in February. By May, the SALT Treaty was signed, and Vietnam was on a glide path to U.S. withdrawal, on terms set largely by Moscow. The question isn't whether the analogy holds. The question is whether the administration has priced in the same trade. The verifiable signals to watch over the next 14 days. 1. Public Chinese commentary on Taiwan. Beijing rarely escalates rhetoric when it's planning to extract something. Listen for de-escalation, not threats. 2. The EU's Iran posture. Brussels has been quietly courting Tehran since the strikes began. If EU foreign ministers issue a coordinated statement this week, Washington has lost coverage flank. 3. Semiconductor export control noise out of commerce. Any softening of ASML or KLA enforcement is the most concrete possible signal that Beijing has been promised something material. The first one is rhetorical. The second one is diplomatic positioning. The third one would be the trade. If you only have time to watch one, watch the third. Here's where the major perspectives line up, and where they don't. The realist red, center-left to center, argues China holds the leverage here. Trump needs the off-ramp. The administration's red, center-right, says Hormuz exposure cuts both ways and Iran is meaningfully degraded. The hawkish red, right, says any concession to Beijing on this trip validates a regime trying to make the world safe for autocracy. Where they agree, This summit is consequential. Where they disagree, who's leveraging whom? The biases we detected in the cluster of 67 articles. 1. Western U.S. policy framing dominated. Chinese and Iranian domestic perspectives were underrepresented. 2. Most outlets centered narratives on individual decision-makers, Trump, Xi, rather than the structural pressures shaping the deal space. 3. Source recency bias. Older diplomatic historian commentary was suppressed in favor of fresh-quote optics. Media. Health score 74. Above average for high-stakes coverage. The underrepresentation of non-Western voices is the most material gap.
That's the read. 67 source articles, 22 outlets. The full analysis, including the source list, the perspective spectrum, the ethics review, is at si-news.ai. Stay sharp.